Bernard Hanratty from Tivus.
That's me.
Welcome to Irish Startup TV.
Delighted to be here.
So firstly, we're on a boat.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, Silicon Docks in Dublin. So how more appropriate than to be on a barge?
Absolutely, and we've got historic Boland's Mills right behind us.
Yeah. So, it's interesting that already there are books being published on the history of the startup environment here, and specifically around Dublin Docks.
So you really are literally right on top of it, right in the centre of it.
Yes, I am. Yes, we'll pray that I don't sink too soon if we keep the nautical themes going.
So tell us about Tivus then.
Well, Tivus was sort of incorporated in the middle of the summer, and it has, the genesis of the name comes from the Latin of the words objective and executive, which are objectivus and executivus respectively. And that's because it's my intention that Tivus will be a company that will provide a number of products in the corporate governance space.
Okay.
So it's an umbrella, it's the name of the company, but won't be the name of any products that are created through Tivus.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the background and what inspired you. It's quite an esoteric niche space.
Yes, yeah, it's very niche, and I guess it has its genesis in the fact that I spent 30 years working in international banking, working with Citigroup here in Dublin, and most of that time I spent in the asset management and insurance world. And the asset management business has a very heavy need and reliance on independent directors to look after the overall governance and the fiduciary standards employed when asset managers are managing money of individuals. Yeah. So there is a sort of reasonably well established career path, which is for people like me after years in industry to retire and go into non-executive directorships as a professional career. So I started looking at that from a number of perspectives, decide what is it that I would most like to do. So I took, after 6 months of travel after I retired, I came back at Easter and I looked at setting up a completely other business, which is called a director's platform. A director's platform would be where I would manage a stable of non-executive directors. I would provide them premises, meeting rooms, secretarial staff, and technology. Now, most of the people who have set about setting up platforms of this nature are well-established, mature directors who say, I can franchise my way of doing business by bringing these other people in under my umbrella. I would be starting from scratch because I don't have a portfolio of non-executive directors, so technology had to be the jaw-dropping, sort of compelling factor that was going to attract people to my platform. But I couldn't find technology that I felt worked. And that's how I pivoted very early on from being a service provider, with premises and everything else that went with it, to coming up with some technology solutions specifically for the non-executive director market.
Typically, somebody is looking for a non-executive director. How would they go about it?
Well, most of the law firms maintain panels of non-executive directors with whom they're familiar, and therefore they can sort of vouch to a certain degree, but they would be hands-off in terms of it's your choice as to which non-executive director you might like.
And typically, are they, you mentioned the word stable, so to use the phrase, are they like a stable of people of a certain age with a certain experience set?
Yeah.
What is the typical profile of a non-executive director?
The typical profile of a non-executive director certainly has been somebody in their late 50s and beyond who wishes to keep a hand in the industry and in very genuine way to provide the benefit of their years of experience to people who are running other companies. Increasingly, you're seeing people who choose as early as 40 to become a professional non-executive director. So it's almost like a lifestyle choice, but it's a hard choice to take because it takes quite a while to build up a portfolio of directorships which collectively, equate to what you would have been had you stayed in corporate life. But
in terms of the money you earn, or
in terms of the money that you earn.
Okay.
In terms of the experience, it's much more varied, so it makes it much more interesting. And in terms of lifestyle, non-executive directors typically do not work 9 hours a day, 5 days a week. And in fact, if they did, they're overburdened, because as a non-executive director, you have to be available to deal with a crisis when a crisis arises in the company. So if you're committed to a point on a day-to-day basis, you're all day you're employed, well then you don't have capacity to deal with those crises, and that's a factor that's of major concern to the Irish regulator today.
Drawing on your experience of working in compliance and with regulation, what advice would you have for a startup? Because I've certainly become aware in the last couple of years there's a lot of issues around data protection and other areas of compliance that quite often startups, it's the last thing they think of if they're even aware of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that for startups, there are two aspects to the benefit that's going to be acquired by bringing non-executive directors onto the board. And the first is the business advisory, the experience, the network, the introductions, and the market expertise that director is going to go.
So how quickly should that happen? If I've got an idea and I'm about to start maybe building out that idea, how quickly should I be turning to the guy that has that experience?
I think as early as 6 months, because those individuals become advocates of whatever that business concept is. So I, at the moment, am trying to build up an advisory group to do precisely that, because I can say, this person or that person is on my advisory group. That immediately empowers me and gives me a certain degree of credibility when I'm speaking to other market participants, because those people are around me.
Okay.
However, the second benefit, apart from expertise, is it enforces a discipline, a business discipline on you that you don't have as an individual.
Because you suddenly find yourself having to report to the board.
Exactly. So a challenge that I have is I'm self-funded today. I don't have any investors to answer to. I don't have to prepare monthly burn rates or cash flow projections.
You're
because
also an
it's
executive director.
Exactly, because it's me, and me.
Yeah.
So that actually is a risk for me.
Okay.
Because I so passionately believe in what I do. I run off in a direction, and actually I never step back and look at some of those really fundamentals. Are you ever going to get your money back, Bernard? How big is the market really, right? So from a governance perspective, the simply being answerable to a third party demands that discipline of you that otherwise you won't achieve.
So from the point of view of Tivus, you're very much a startup and you're very much early stage, but from the point of view of your experience as being an executive director, I think that anyone who's watching this video will learn a lot, and that there's a very good message there, and that is to try and find a good non-executive director as soon as possible, so that you can draw on not only their wisdom but also perhaps their network, and also to have somebody to be accountable to.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So that's very solid advice for any startup.
Well, yeah, I think it is. I need to take it myself, though. And in many respects, the way I'm sort of compensating for that, given that I've come from an organisation with 200,000 people in it, right? I'm now standalone. Is that I've a number of guys who are working with me in a consulting capacity, each of whom have 15, 20 years experience in technology and startups. So they're the guys who are keeping me honest, if you like, and making sure that I don't run into development mode, so I can, after 6 months, I haven't written a line of code, right?
Yeah.
What sort of a startup is that? Well, hopefully it's one that's being really careful to get its MVP right and to work out what problem it is my clients most want me to solve.
It makes a lot of sense. It's relatively easy sometimes to build out. I've certainly seen a number of startups blow up where they've started to write code without really thinking about the future.
Right.
It's like building a house. You've got to have a very clear idea about what you're going to end up with.
Yes, but
you can end up with a chimera.
And what happens is that, you know, one gets impatient. You know,
Yeah,
you want to start seeing some progress. Because people say, what have you been doing for the last 6 months? And it's very hard to say, I'm working really hard, but you haven't written a line of code yet. Yeah, I know, but I'm working really hard.
How was it going from a big organisation to being a startup? Because you mentioned you retired. You don't look like you're old enough to retire.
No, but I spent 30 years in banking.
Yeah.
So, you know, very much my frame of mind is driven by a consideration that I'm in the infancy of a new 25-year career.
Okay.
So I don't have to be wildly successful in this new career in the first year or 2 years or 3 years. I do need, you know, to live and put food on table, so I need to find some way of generating some income. But I'm being sort of very much patient with myself in terms of my own expectations about how quickly this component of my life is going to build up. I've always been sort of relatively creative, slightly maverick within the corporate world. Some of my most memorable times were designing systems and inventing new concepts, and then in the space of 6 months or a year, acronyms that I dreamt up in a dark room, you know, over long nights, becomes people's vernacular, and they just use them every day, and it's tremendously satisfying, and it's just really great fun in that whole, both the design process and then the implementation process and getting that all done. Now, the big difference is I used to be able to throw ideas over my shoulder, and I would have really capable people to pick them up and run with them and say, is this what you were thinking about? Now I don't have those people. So in that respect, I need to be much more focused in terms of what it is I'm trying to do, because I may have 10 ideas a day. I can't pursue them all, otherwise nothing will get done. So that discipline of remaining focused on one thing and getting the very basics of what I need to get done is the biggest difference for me, because I can't be engaged in a whole load of different things at the same time, because I don't have those respective teams running each of those different things for me.
When you started, you had a very fixed idea, and you realised then to support that idea you actually had to go out and build out the technology.
Yeah.
We're 6 months down the road now. In another 6 months, say June 2016, where would you like to be? Magic wand, all else equal.
Okay, so magic wand, I will have a group of charter clients using version 1 of my product, which is called Private Sec. And the general sort of environment within which non-execs work is they work on their own, and they no longer have a tech support help desk, a secretary sitting outside their door, a conference room, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to do in this software is provide them with a virtual private secretary who's looking at everything that's going on in their life, keeping track of their time commitments, keeping track of all their engagements and their appointments, and being ever present to advise them about how they should best be employing their time to meet their regulatory requirements and their governance and fiduciary requirements as a non-executive director.
So very much providing that infrastructure.
Correct.
Fantastic. Well, Bernard, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing your story, and look forward to keeping in touch.
Richie, it's been a delight.
Coming back to see when this has happened.
I look forward to sharing the next episode.
Super.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.